They have no idea they're bringing the disease with them. The plague, en route to the world's most densely populated continent. Siena, Italy, 1348. A family locks itself in, hoping to lock the disease out. The father writes an account, one of the only surviving records, as the invasion of Europe begins.
It was a cruel and horrible thing. I don't know where to begin to tell of its brutal and pitiless ways.
The battle for the survival of mankind has begun. Mankind faces a battle against extinction. Siena, Italy. 6 months after the plague invades Europe, thousands are dead. Agnolo di Tura, local businessman, the town chronicler. He barricades his family inside their home. The killer outside must not come in. Agnolo uses fire and smoke to ward off the plague. No one suspects it's carried by rats.
You don't know what the real cause is. It could be in the air, it could be in the water. And so you have this sensation around you of something building up, but you don't know what it is.
The plague takes 10 years to cross Asia, moving slowly from village to village. But Europe is the perfect breeding ground. Hundreds of cities, 80 million people living in close quarters.
These cities had all the conditions to sustain plague: the filth, the squalor, the rodents that were just considered part of natural life at that point, and nobody considered that these rodents and their fleas could potentially be a problem. And then you had this massive number of people all packed together in these small dwellings, and it was the exact sort of situation you would want if you were trying to cause a plague epidemic.
The plague has entered Agnolo's home, infecting his wife, Nicoluccia.
If you've ever seen bubonic plague, it's very gross. A huge purple growth takes place, which creates psychological trauma, havoc, and incredible fear.
Agnolo tries anything, everything.
Vomit regularly, especially at the first sign of any illness.
Drink a glass of your own urine twice a day.
Apply an ointment to the bubo made of honey, egg yolks, and scorpion oil to draw out the poison.
Avoid sex and baths.
Finally, the plague doctor, his hood filled with herbs for protection. His treatment: drain the disease out of the victim.
Physicians would try any desperate measure that could work. Bloodletting was tried, leeches were used, but none seemed to work. In fact, the smartest thing a doctor could do is stay away from the patients, because inadvertently we were taking the bacteria from one patient to the next.
All the while, the plague bacteria are mutating, finding new ways to reproduce and spread. They no longer need to be carried by fleas. they are airborne.
The airborne plague is fundamentally different because it now can be transmitted from human being to human being.
The kill rate was 75%. Now, nearly 100. In 6 months, 31,000 people, 60% of Siena, wiped out.
More than 2 out of every 3 persons you knew in Siena were gone. Families decimated, clans decimated. Everybody decimated.
I, Agnolo de Tora, buried my children with my own hands. There was no one who wept for any death, for all awaited death. So many died that all believed it was the end of the world.
Fear and panic sets in, and you're asking yourself, what's causing this? You know, did I do something wrong? Did I forget to go to church? And each symptom seems like the devil is doing it.
The overwhelming theory was an avenging God. Somehow, this was the anger of God causing this disease.
Now, disaster tests mankind's faith. Avignon, France. Home to Pope Clement VI. One of the most powerful men in the world, controlling vast armies and enormous wealth.
When plague hits Avignon, the people expected the Pope to come to their salvation, to go and intercede to God to stop the plague.
But Clement VI can't stop the plague. It devastates Avignon, killing 1,300 people in a single day. Pope Clement buys a field and buries 11,000 people. But it is not enough. He tries a radical solution. He consecrates the River Rhone as a floating cemetery.
As bodies floated down the Rhone River, people realized the Pope could do nothing for them. Either God wasn't listening, or worse.
Fear and loss turned to rage. The mob wants someone to blame. All over Europe, the hunt is on for a scapegoat. (1349), the plague rages across Europe. Mankind is at its weakest and most irrational, searching for someone to blame. Strasbourg, Germany. The plague hasn't hit here, yet. But rumors spread faster than the disease itself of a diabolical plot. They say the Jews are poisoning the drinking water.
This was the Middle Ages. This was before the scientific revolution and the scientific method. You had a world that was rife of superstition, anger, confusion, and unfortunately, that often bubbled off into prejudice.
Ever since the 6th century BC, when their homeland was conquered, Jewish people have created thriving communities around the planet. Today, 26 countries have Jewish populations over 10,000. When fear grips mankind, minorities are an easy target. The authorities in Strasbourg try to protect them, posting guards in their streets. But isolation breeds contempt. The mob takes the law into its own hands.
Kinder, schnell! Schnell!
February 14th, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The Jews of Strasbourg are given a choice: convert or die. "1,000 Jews are burned alive. But the massacre does nothing to save the city. 5 months later, the plague arrives, claiming another 16,000 victims. All over Europe, great cities lie deserted. An eyewitness reports,
Shops are shut, people rare. A deep silence in almost every place. Consider what we were and what we've become. There was a crowd of us. Now we're alone.
mankind rendered powerless by tiny bacteria. Across Asia and Europe, the plague kills over 50 million people in 15 years. But isolation can protect us. The Atlantic Ocean has stopped the plague reaching the Americas.